Good evening and welcome. On behalf of the Virginia Divine Fraternities, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Incorporated, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, Incorporated, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Incorporated, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity, Incorporated, and Iota Phi Theta Fraternity, Incorporated, we are honored to welcome you to this critical voter education virtual forum. This forum is presented for educational purposes only. Participation in this event does not represent an official endorsement of any candidate by the hosting organizations. We are especially proud to feature the Honorable L. Douglas Wilder, 66th Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, presenting The Power of the Black Vote. Following Governor Wilder's remarks, we will have a featured panel discussion, Building an Informed Electorate, Why This Year's Election Matters in Virginia. Panelists include the Honorable Carlos Clanton, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity member, Norfolk City Council and Virginia District Chair for A Voteless People is a Hopeless People. Richard Maddox, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, Eastern Province Pole March overseeing Virginia, Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Bermuda. Partner, Maddox Woolfolk, LLC. Government Relations and Political Strategy, Robert Lester, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Civic Engagement Coordinator, Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, Stephen Miller Pitts, Jr., Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity, Chief of Staff to the 36th International President and CEO of Phi Beta Sigma, Director of Strategic Partnerships, VCIC, Adjunct Professor of Public Policy, Virginia State University, David Washington, Iota Phi Theta Fraternity, Political Consultant and Chairman, Chesapeake Democratic Committee. And now, it is our distinct pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's conversation, Mr. Kim Greenidge, Regional Vice President and General Manager of Gray Media, is a trusted voice in journalism and civic engagement. Thank you for joining us, and let's get started.
Welcome to everyone. This is the second time we've gotten together for the Virginia Divine Nine Fraternities Voter Education Virtual Town Hall. The first one was such a success, we needed to do it twice, and today you are really going to have an hour of power. So let me tell you a little bit about what's going on before we get to the Honorable L. Douglas Wilder, our 66th Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Why are we doing this? We want to make sure, like any election, but especially right now, that everyone who has the power to vote will get out there and vote. We want to make sure that you leave this session informed as to why you should vote, and the decision that you make is up to you. It's very important to know that this is a nonpartisan event. We're not here to play politics. We are here to educate. But it is important that when you leave here, that you bring the truth to power. So without further ado, I want to let you know that the events tonight are going to flow very well. We'll be with you for about an hour, and you will have time for audience participation. So before we get started, let me tell you about the most important man that we will hear from tonight, a little bit about our governor. L. Douglas Wilder's career in public service spans over 70 years and includes many historic milestones. Governor Wilder became the first African-American to be elected governor in the United States, leading the Commonwealth of Virginia from 1990 to 1994. As the Commonwealth's 66th governor, he was commended for his sound fiscal management and balancing the state budget during very difficult economic times. Financial World magazine ranked Virginia as the best managed state in the United States for 2 consecutive years under his administration. Prior to his time as governor, he served as a lieutenant governor from 1986 to 1990 and as a state senator from 1969 to 1985. Chairing the committees on transportation, rehabilitation and social services, privileges and elections, the Virginia Advisory Legislative Council, the forerunner of the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission that conducts program evaluations, policy analysis, and oversight of state agencies on behalf of the Virginia General Assembly and the Senate Steering Committee, which appoints committee members. Other legislative achievements include providing state health care coverage for sickle cell anemia patients, toughening penalties for capital murders, and expanding low and moderate income housing. For 8 years, he persisted in sponsoring legislation that eventually led to establishing a state holiday honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., making Virginia the first state in the nation to have a legislative holiday for Dr. King. Governor Wilder was the driving force in appointing Black judges to serve on the bench. An attorney by profession, Governor Wilder gained recognition as a leading criminal lawyer, trial lawyer. He graduated from Howard University Law School in 1959 and later established a legal firm that became known as Wilder, Gregory and Associates, one of the very few minority-owned businesses in Virginia at the time. Prior to earning his JD, he graduated from Virginia Union University with a BS degree in chemistry and worked in the office of the chief medical examiner as a toxicology technician. Today, Governor Wilder is a distinguished professor at Virginia Commonwealth University's L. Douglas Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs, where he lectures and hosts symposiums, including Race in Academia, the Triple Pandemic, and Racism, Health, and Accountability, and most recently, HBCUs and the Absence of Support. He is also the author of Son of Virginia, A Life in America's Political Arena. As one of the Commonwealth's best and most outspoken ambassadors, he continues to be a champion for the people and remains highly engaged in issues from Virginia Governor Wilder is also a recipient of numerous awards, including the very prestigious NAACP Spingarn Medal. Most recently, he received the University of Virginia Center for Politics Defender of Democracy Award, which recognized his lifelong efforts and actions to improve and strengthen democracy. His legacy continues to inspire all citizens to engage in public service by demanding what is right and criticizing what is wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, L. Douglas Wilder, our 66th governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Yeah, let me thank you for the excellent introduction you make, and let me tell you how nice and how good it is for me always to be with you. You made your contributions known, and the fact that you're here attests to that. To my fellow panelists, I want to thank them for participating and for giving me the opportunity. People call me on occasion and say, "How are you doing?" And I say, "I woke up this morning." I said, that's all you need at my age. If you can say that, you're in pretty good shape. But I'm pleased to be here. I'm pleased to be a part of what we call, and you are calling, the Virginia Divine Nine Fraternities with voter education. You know, when we were coming up, and I was coming up, you had the poll tax. And my father was so proud that he would vote, and he didn't make any money. I had six sisters and brothers. I had six sisters and one brother. I was next to the youngest, so we didn't have any money. But he had his buddies. They would come by and they would argue and fuss about what was going on, but he insisted on voting. Now, you can take a man with a family, and my mother rather couldn't work. She had all these children. And when you take a family like that and still being able to pay a poll tax, it's a big piece of money that comes out of a small check. And yet he insisted on that. And so when I went to college, I was very lucky. I went there, I was 16. Virginia Union was the only school that I could go to. But I was lucky enough to have these veterans returning. And they were coming back having served in World War II. And just listening to them and the experiences that they had, knowing that life could be better in other parts of the country and other countries as well. And I would just listen and listen and listen. And it got so that most of the people I was listening to were Omegas. And then I got so, the rush came on and other fraternities were looking. Richmond was a Sigma town. DC was a Kappa town. New York was a Alpha town. Richmond turned out to be an Omega town when I said, look, I want to be a part of this thing that we got as far as moving ahead. One of the things, though, that I found that coming up, older people allowed me to speak. They allowed me to listen. They allowed me to learn. In the barbershop, which was right behind my house, they came out with the people who had registered to vote. And they had this yellow book that they hung in the barbershop. And it was my job. And you know, in the barber shop is where we like to wolf, run our mouths and talk. We know everything in the barber shop. But my job, I took it upon myself to do it. If you had not voted, and I looked in the book and found out that your name wasn't there, I would tell the guys who ran the barber shop, he shouldn't be speaking. He is not registered. He's not in here. And that thing led me to believe that we could make a change. When I ran for governor, and when I ran for the state senate, I was speaking earlier, the salary was little or nothing. I think the salary was $1,500 a year. There was no secretary, no office. There was no legislative assistant. And so it was designed for rich people only. That was, and people who could afford it. That's what the elections were about. I was talking to someone earlier today, and the president is coming here to campaign, and he's going to go to Norfolk, Virginia, to Tidewater, Virginia, rather, Norfolk be included. And the candidate for governor is asking him to go there. And this person asked me, why do you think that's so? I said, because the largest concentration of Black people in Virginia is in the Tidewater area. And that's where it will be the largest numbers of voters. The largest numbers of voters are in the Northern Virginia area, but not the largest number of Black voters. And consequently, when President Obama, who's coming here, as if I may have said another name, but we all know who's coming. I always call him the Big O, because I had such great foreign relationships with him and understanding. But we need to make certain that we are heard. We need to demand what's right, to criticize what's wrong. We need to understand that the Divine Nine, they're here as examples. They are the pillars. They are the people that are here to guide and to grasp. Our young people need to be encouraged to stay in school. Don't say you can't do it because you can. We need to make our elected officials respond to us. I didn't notice, and no notice, I didn't say just some elected officials. All of them. When you call somebody up, you want to speak to that person, not to their aide, not to their legislative assistant. You want to speak to that person, and that person doesn't have time for you. You won't have time for them. Now, everybody is concerned. Why Virginia and New Jersey are the only two states that have statewide elections this year. The good old boys years ago meant that to be the case because they didn't want too many people coming out and voting as they do in presidential years. And as the bird machine would have it, from the White House to the courthouse, they wanted to control what was going on. That's slipping. That slipped, and it got away. Now, our job as people, not Black, not brown, not yellow, not white, nor anything else, but as people, to say that we are what it's all about. We want to be a part of the process. We want to be able to see that the health needs are met. We need to know that prices go down, that costs go down, that we're not stuck with healthcare costs beyond compare to take millions and millions of dollars to do the testing of the drug at someone's expense, our expense, quite frankly. Then the prices of the drugs go up. There will always be opposition. But now that we have increased the numbers in these elected positions, our job is to make certain that it continues. Our job, likewise, is to demand of those who are seeking to run the state as the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, that they show not just what they want to do, what have you done? I usually ask that question. Tell me what you have done. Tell me what you've tried to do. Tell me what you're going to do. And tell me why I should vote for you. Not why Black people should vote for you. Why should I? Don't look at me as a Black person. Look to me as a person. Look to me as a voter. And that's what I think we've come to. That's why I like to see the epitome of where we were expressed in the quote, not Divine Nine. That's what fraternities meant. That's what sororities mean. Uplift and to carry on to future generations to prosper, to know that they can be the best of whatever, and they can be anything they want to do and be if we let them, and we stay behind them. I'm pleased to be with you.
Thank you so much, Governor. Always, whenever we're in your presence, it's always a history lesson. And I want you to know that we do recognize that you are living history. And I do appreciate so much that you always take the time to be present and to make sure that we hear what you have to say. Thank you so much. We won't let you down. We'll make sure that we show out very strongly on Election Day. Thank you for taking the time to be with us this evening. So before we go on with the rest of the program, I want you to first hear from Robert Lester. We're going to stay on the theme of voter registration and access overview. And Robert, why don't you come on in and let us know what's going on?
Good evening, everyone. Robert Lester with the Virginia Interfaith Center, also a proud member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity. It was so great to see our dear brother, L. Douglas Wilder. And he did mention he's a member of Omega Psi Phi, but he did not mention that he's a 75-year member of Omega Psi Phi. And that brother is still working every day to uplift our community. So thank him again. We had in our last call, when we had one of the gubernatorial candidates on, we talked about 2 calls of action. And I'm still putting this out to all of the Divine Nine members and families and friends that we collectively try to make a difference in this election. We need everybody to come out and vote. So we are encouraging people who are members of faith and believe in any faith, but we are asking people to come together in their congregations. And the people that can hear my voice right now, if you do go to services on Sunday, this coming Sunday, we have 2 Sundays left before the election. And we're asking members of the Divine Nine to speak to their pastor if they are not or have not spoken about this election coming up on November the 4th. If you have not heard anything about it, it needs to be communicated in the pulpit. So we're asking congregations or members of congregations to partner with their membership to develop a plan to make sure all eligible members are registered to vote. Now, this is key here because tomorrow is the last day for registration. And you're going to hear a little bit in a minute of how people can still register all the way through tomorrow. We also in your congregation are asking that you distribute information about ways to vote through congregational sources. Now, we only have 2 weeks left, so I don't know if they can get things printed about that right now, but we want to promote the sacred privilege, or ask the leaders of the congregation to promote the sacred privilege of voting, and also to learn about the candidates. And again, we're down to the last couple of days, and we're going to talk to you about a couple of tools that you can do to learn if you do not know the candidates. We're going to talk about that. So if you attend a congregation this Sunday or next Sunday, please make an effort to share the importance of this election with your members. Here on this QR code here, and we're asking that members, people who are attending with us today, if you have your phone there, you can scan this QR code, and this will take you to the election board where you can register to vote. You can also request an absentee ballot. You can also check your voting status. We want everybody, when they check their voting status, that it clearly says that they are active. We have found across the Commonwealth of Virginia that people are going and checking their status and it's saying inactive. So you want to check it before you get to the polls. And lastly, I think I've mentioned already about requesting an absentee ballot. So I give you, again, in closing, some important dates. Tomorrow is the last day for registration. It also is the last day to apply for an absentee ballot to be mailed to you. These are key dates right there tomorrow. Now, if you miss for any reason, if the person is not registered by tomorrow, a citizen of Virginia still has an opportunity, if they're 18 or above and they don't have any convictions, they still have an opportunity to vote in the election through a provisional ballot. It is called through the mechanism of same-day registration. So, but we prefer that people register in advance. But if they don't do it, there's a backup plan. But let's try to encourage everybody to get registered. The QR code is right there. The one on the left is for registering to vote. The one on the right is for if you know of a citizen that is not able to vote due to maybe having a past issue with being registered, specifically related to voter restoration of rights. That QR code on the right is there for that person to be assisted. And I just say thank you for your time. Make sure you have a plan to vote. You must have a plan to vote in this coming election. Thank you, and God bless everyone.
Thank you so much, Robert. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate all the work you do as a civic engagement coordinator for the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. So now we come to a real good feature in the program where we have the main session. We're going to have an expert panel discussion. And this panel theme is going to be building an informed electorate, why this year's election matters in Virginia. As you know, all eyes will be on Virginia because we have two elections going on, Virginia and also the state of New Jersey. And many times what happens in Virginia, so goes the country, especially with the new midterm elections coming up. So just briefly, I'm going to introduce some of the folks that will be on the panel. Carlos Clanton, Richard Maddox, Robert Lester, Stephen Miller Potts, David Washington, and Carlos is on the, Carlos, are you going to be in the panel as well? Yes, yeah, Carlos Clanton. Okay, want to make sure you're there. All right. So these questions do not come from me, even though I work for the media. I want to remind everybody that this is an off-the-record conversation, and I've been asked to be the moderator because I love doing this and love volunteering. So I'm going to have some questions going for you, but please feel free to put questions into the chat, and we will get to your audience participation in a minute. Okay, this one will be for Carlos and Richard. Why are local and state elections so important, and especially in Virginia in 2025?
I guess I'll go ahead and kick it off. As a local elected official, I can tell you right now, I served for 6.5 years on the school board. And from school board to city council, these are the things and these are the individuals who are making decisions about your day-to-day in your local hometown. But we're also setting ordinances. And so, and also, I guess, ordinances are local laws for your individual area there. But the other thing is that in Virginia, there is an election every year. I know you hear that always here. This is the most important one. Well, I think when you start looking about everything that's going on around you, sometimes when you hear, I think Governor Wilder mentioned it, when you're in the barbershop and somebody has something to say, but they didn't cast a vote. Well, you've got to make sure that you vote all the way down the ticket. And when we say the ticket, that means governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, your local constitutional officers. We've got our Commonwealth's attorneys, our sheriffs. We've got the commissioner of revenue and the treasurer, which are all the constitutional officers. And then you have special elections and a city like Virginia Beach that has a referendum on how they even will constitute who represents them and what structure that will look like. So it's very incumbent upon us to pay attention, but also to do our research and make sure that we cast our vote in every election, because it is our one opportunity every year where we get to have our voice and let it be counted.
Richard?
Yeah, Brother Kim, first let me thank Governor Wilder for his participation in this forum, as well as you, Brother Kim, and I definitely want to thank the committee, including my political awareness chair, Brother Cleve Packer. Brothers, having done this, I can recall being engaged and involved in the political process in the great state of Mississippi from the time I was 7 years old. And so I found found an interest in it because I grew up at a time when my grandparents and their friends were very engaged in the local political process. And so they always said, and then I began to hear it even more, all politics is local, but voting is so important because not only do when you register and vote, you have an opportunity to serve on various commissions. That's including jury duties. That includes all of the commissions that your local authority have that make decisions that impact your household, impact your community. And so once you register to vote, it provides you with an opportunity. We complain about who the police chief is. We complain about who the prosecutor or the city attorney is, but all of those folks are appointed by elected officials. So I had the pleasure of participating in 2019 in many of the protests because of Brother Colin Kaepernick, and recognizing how important it was because it was about police violence. But one of the things that I had the opportunity as a social action chair for Kappa Psi, I had an opportunity to kind of talk to him and share those things with him. He said he didn't vote. And that pretty much disturbed me because I remember from 7 years old, I couldn't wait to get 18 in the state of Mississippi so that I could vote. So I always say and continue to believe that all politics is local. And it's so important that we start the process out voting.
So let's continue on the theme of why voter turnout is so important. So can you tell us, voter turnout is important, but how does that shape policy and representation? And I'll turn to David and Robert to answer that question. But before that, I want to make sure that I welcome on the screen David Washington and also Cleve Packer, who will be part of this conversation as well. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. Brother Robert, you want to go first, or you want me to?
No, you go ahead. You can go ahead.
Well, why is voting so important? I'm a true believer that you have to be a part of the process in order to have a seat at the table. When we see people complain about certain things that's going on, one of the other panelists spoke. Well, the question that you ask, and I think our the Governor Water asked the question. Well, do you vote? And if the answer is no, then you're not a part of the process. You have to be a part of the process in order for those politicians in your district, in your community, in your area, to feel like you could possibly, they could lose their job if they don't listen to you. At the end of the day, a lot of folks don't understand that these positions is a job, and folks want to keep their job. So if you want to have a voice in your community, I'm a political consultant by trade, so I have the opportunity to sit down and talk to politicians and figure out what is your constituency saying. And if the constituencies are not advocating on their behalf, then the politicians don't know what's going on. So it's extremely vital that you be a part of the process. You consistently be a part of the process, and so that those politicians that represent you at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level, know who you are, know that your community matters, and know that if they don't listen to you, you will find somebody to replace them. So it's extremely important for that purpose to be a part of the voting process.
And thank you for that, David. What I would add is that right now our country, and I'm not just talking about Virginia, but our country is kind of divided like 50-50. And that's why we are having so many problems with moving forward with policies. Everyone sees the chaos that's going on in DC. And in Virginia, we're very close. In our General Assembly, the Senate right now, the count is 21-19 in favor of the Democrats. And on the House side, I think it's 51-49. So it's very close. So what that means with this election, even though we're only voting for the House of Delegates, the 100 seats in the House, with the state being so close, every vote matters. Every single vote counts. It's important. So when you talk about the importance of voter turnout and is turning out as many people as possible, it is important. And how does that translate into policy? When we have a number of things now, we have voters in the Commonwealth that may be what I call one issue voters. You may have a person who is focused on the Second Amendment. I want to be able to have my gun at all times, or some people that want to limit or restrict gun access. We have people that have, whether it's reproductive freedom. Some people are one issue voters. But when we talk about policy for the whole Commonwealth, there are a lot of issues. And so from affordable housing is a crisis here in Virginia. Healthcare, you're hearing a lot on the news about Medicare and Medicaid and things of that nature. You're hearing about the SNAP benefits and things. All of these things are policy related, and those are addressed through the electorate. So again, having a large turnout, electing people who share our values, and here in this body, we're nonpartisan, but we're looking for candidates that share our values and can work on these policy areas to make all Virginians better. So that's what I would say about the turnout and how important it is and how it shapes our policy in Virginia.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I think that is something that goes very overlooked. I think a lot of times people think that their vote doesn't matter, but there are a lot of elections, especially on the local level, where it's been less than 1%, 2% that usually gets to a runoff, or why people lose or win. So here's a question. This one will be for Stephen and Richard. So tell me, why are there barriers to voter participation? And if there are barriers to voter participation, how do we overcome them?
Thank you, Brother Kim. First of all, the intent was never, and Governor Wilder mentioned it very early on, the intent was never for us to have full participation in the voting process. When we were considered 3/5 of a person, it was only for those landowners. And as you know, when the slaves were, and I air quotes, freed, and you were promised the 40 acres and a mule, that in itself was to provide you with the capital to be able to vote. Well, that never happened. And so when we became, when the Voting Rights Act, which is under extreme attack at this point, the Civil Rights Act in '64, and none of those were designed prior to that. They weren't designed for us to participate in the process. It was white men who were this process was supposed to be decided for. But then they recognized that if the women's suffrage, and if we don't bring our women off the fields, off the playing field of protesting and requesting the opportunity to participate, then they're going to go with what is the majority, which was going to include people of color. And so they offered white women the opportunity to vote to quiet them. And so out of the Equal Protection of the Law amendment, it afforded us to be able to go into court and use those same arguments for African Americans and other people of color to participate. So even today, as you can see, there's quite voter suppression taking place throughout the country. There's also the current administration has made it very clear that he wanted any state with a majority population to go back, which are your red states, to go back and draw us out of the picture or participated in the process. The other part about this, though, and it's just so, we always believe in fairness. We come up with this idea of fairness, but nobody else cares about fairness. We come up with this, let's not gerrymander, let's prevent that. And so we put together commissions to draw our districts. They drew Others drew their districts through the legislature. And if the legislature will join the district, the legislatures are going to carve out those districts that's going to get them and the people that think like them elected. So it's so important that we recognize that voter suppression is extremely, the others are very engaged in voter suppression while we are looking at it from a fairness perspective. And so it's nothing new. It's nothing new that we have had the opportunity to face voter suppression over the past 9 months. But this has been taking place since the passage of the Voters' Rights Act. And so they began that process. Project 25 wasn't designed just 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, it was a pre 1980 document that was put in place.
Well, thank you, sir. And Stephen, so what's your perspective?
Yeah, I think, and I ask you next time, let me go before our good Kappa friend, because he can get all the good answers. But I think my perspective to add to this conversation really is from the perspective of us recognizing what's really going on and the second and third order of effects of voter intimidation, voter oppression. And so I do think that part of this is probably part of the original design of our country. We say it, but I don't think we recognize that with us being a capitalistic society, our democracy doesn't always equate with that mantra. And so I think that there are individuals and special interest groups that understand this, and the dollar, as the good Kappa man, Brother Maddox said, Frater Maddox said, the system was set up to keep certain demographics out of the system, but also to maintain the system in the hands of those that can control it. And so what we're seeing now is not the overt, but we are seeing overt, but we're seeing a combination of covert and overt operations, right? In the name of a dollar, right? When we look at the sanctity of our election cycles, we know that big money is spent in our elections, right? Which means that money sways not only what the voters think about, what the talking points are for our elected officials, but who and how messages are received. And so it's a bigger game. And so one of the closing points that I'll have is, this is not just germane to the United States. It's not just germane to Virginia. Across the world, democracy and democratic republics are being attacked. I think that there's some numbers out there that only 5% of the elections across the world are actually true democratic elections. So I think that it's imperative that we understand the game that's being played and then figure out ways that we can build collective power to navigate in the system that we are becoming participants in.
Thank you for that, Stephen. That really leads into one of the other questions that was submitted by the fraternities, and that is, what can our organizations do to get more involved with our communities, to get them engaged in the electoral process, and most importantly, show up to the polls and vote? And I'm going to flip this one to Robert and Carlos.
Thank you, Kim. One thing I would say is there's power in numbers. There is power in numbers. For myself, when you introduced me earlier, you said I was a member of the Virginia Interfaith Center. That's where I'm employed at, the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. I'm a member of Omega Psi Phi. But myself, like a number of people that are on this call right now, even our listening audience, we're involved in a lot of other organizations. Everybody that I know on this call, this committee that put this together, we're all very busy because we're not just in one organization, two. Most of us are in 3, 4, 5, and things of that nature. But what I would say is that we need to leverage that, the being in these different organizations, especially when it comes to educating the people in our neighborhoods, in our community, on this electoral process and how legislation gets passed. I will tell you, at least 99% of the people in Virginia have no idea how that General Assembly works down here in Richmond, Virginia. It would take a little while to, it would take going to college and taking political science to really learn the intricate parts of it. But I think if we partner with different organizations, like for example, the NAACP, that's a civil rights organization that's been around since I think it was 1919, somewhere around there, 1909, I think it is. But the NAACP has been doing voter education for a long time. I'm also in the SCLC here in Richmond. That's another civil rights organization started with Dr. Martin Luther King. I think collectively, anyone that's hearing my voice in the D9, if we partner with other civic-minded organizations, we can come together, put together a program where we can then bring in citizens to learn about this process. Because on November the 4th, or if you early vote, that actually is just the first step, is just casting your ballot in voting for elected officials to share your values. There's another part to this when we get to the General Assembly and we're trying to implement or vote or get the governor to sign legislation. So I will close and say that organizations coming together, building in numbers, and then reaching out to our citizens and educating them on this process. And we can do this. We can do it.
Carlos, would you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I will say that I totally agree with everything that Robert mentioned there. And I'll just say what we're doing today is an example of that. We came together as the D9 fraternities back in January, February to begin the conversation. Each and every one of us have some type of voter registration, engagement type of program, but there's power in numbers. We need to work together and collaboratively come together to reach more people. The other thing is the educational part. I had mentioned before that there is a sense, as I lead the Voteless People as a Hopeless People program in our district here in the state, and just asking my fraternity members as they're engaging with voter registration and education efforts, what's the sense on the ground, boots on the ground, or what do you hear? And there's a sense of hopelessness. There's a sense within the community that individuals feel doesn't matter what you do, it's never going to change. And I think that there's an opportunity for us to continue to have educational opportunities like this, to get in the community and to be where people are, to educate them and to also give them opportunities to mobilize and give them opportunities to engage and consistently. And so no matter what, when you feel in the respect that there may be some sense of hopelessness, I think that this is an opportunity where our historical organizations can stand up, where we have always stood up in our communities, to show that there is still a light, that there is still light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, it is not over, but that you do have individuals, you do have organizations who are fighting each and every day, and who are your brothers, your uncles, your church members, who are out there supporting and moving things forward. So I think there's an opportunity to continue to do that.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think that opportunity is definitely there. And I think it's also important that people not feel that they have to be empowered to be in an organization in order to make a difference. I think that all the things that you're hearing today, people can do them as individuals. So tell me, I think I was reading one time and thought somebody said something very powerful. He said, there's nothing like an uninformed voter, someone who really just does not know what's going on. So what is the impact and the importance of having a very informed civic engagement process and getting people in our communities to vote robustly? And I'm really talking also about now and the impact on future generations. And Stephen and David, this will go to you. And David, I'll let you go first.
All right. And this, I want to kind of tie this all into, we talked about something that was very important, voter suppression. And one of the tactics that they use is that if you don't know what's going on, they're allowed to suppress your vote. Here in Chesapeake, where I'm the chair of a local committee, we had Sunday voting back in 2020, back last year. And we had Sunday voting and the lines were around the block, to the point where we had to provide people with water and food as they were waiting for an hour to go vote on Sunday. Folks literally left church and go voted. And because it was so successful, the powers that be said, you know what, no Sunday voting this time around. So they cut it out. And then once again, our councilman from Norfolk, he brought up an issue of the referendum that's happening in Virginia Beach. Why is that? That is because a great man my good friend, who's a brother of Omega Psi Phi, Gary McCullum, who's a part of the Virginia Beach Ministers Coalition, came together and told us back in 2014, we can get minority representation in city council and school boards in Virginia Beach. A lot of folks didn't believe that, but he did. And because we kept working it and working it and working it, we got minority representation in Virginia Beach City Council and school boards. What are they doing now? They're changing the rules so that it makes it harder for folks to be represented in their borough or in their area. Virginia Beach is the largest city in our Commonwealth. And folks won't be able to allow, if the referendum doesn't pass, folks won't be able to allow to be vote based on their district and their community. So a majority minority community like CTAC may have someone who doesn't live in their area and they don't know who they are. And we're trying to prevent that in Virginia Beach. And when people don't know what's going on and are not educated about that, things like that slip by, and people may not be educated on those type of things that are going on. So it's extremely important that we educate one another, that folks do their absolute best to educate themselves, and us as the D9 organizations, that we're out there educating voters on what the issues are.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I try to do when I have these type of engagements is really make sure that everybody understands the difference between civic duty and civic engagement. And civic duty really is passive, right? Civic duty is you basically obeying laws, right? And then maybe casting a vote when you decide that you want to participate. But civic engagement is active, right? This is how we are to solve public problems, promote quality of life, and this is how you can be heard in your community. And so I think really our responsibility as nonpartisan organization is to educate, right? What I really want to see, and I can tell you who to vote for, I'm not, but what I really want to see is people come out and exercise, be engaged, and exercise their right to vote, but also bring somebody along. And so this engagement really is a collective. And what we really need to understand is part of this engagement, and what some of the individuals and organizations have been able to do so successfully, is understand that when you're in front of legislators, when you know what's going on, when you know where the money reside, and you know how to get your point across, you can control the policy and the things that are enacted, right? Legislators don't know everything, and they look for the public to come talk to them. But what we generally have is special interest groups and those that Robert said, those single issue voters who come up, understand the system, play the system, and then get things done. This thing that we have as far as our constitutional republic and our democracy is really involved in the engagement of everyday people. And I know everybody has a lot of things going on daily, but the real question is, what will it take for you to wake up and to participate? Do all your rights and your privileges need to be taken away because they're currently being done? Does everything need to come closing in and come down your lane for you to get engaged? Or will you get engaged and find your people and then come together so that we can move Virginia and the nation abroad collectively?
Excuse me. So Carlos, I'm not sure if I can see the chat. Do we have questions from the audience in the chat?
We do have some questions that have come up. I've got one here.
Okay. Is there a recommended activity or activities that the five fraternities should lead together that would make the largest impact in encouraging civic engagement among African American men?
Yeah. So if I could take a quick stab at this, being I know we have some elected fraternity members in this also, but serving as chief of staff to our immediate past president, we've been doing this work, but it takes a proper communication and education to get the members to come together, right? And so, if you heard at the beginning of this event, this is our second collective engagement as fraternities in Virginia. And so we really need to take this model and build upon it. We already talking about doing things for the midterm elections and build the capacity to show, starting off, that we can actually get this done, we can agree upon it, and then we can execute at a high level. And I think that is something that in your local area with all the chapters, we go and people about to be at homecomings and we're going to be on the yard talking about, oh, you chose the wrong colors, this, that, and the third. We also need to be talking about, when we doing this program to do the civic engagement, knock some doors and get people out to the polls.
Totally agree. One of the other things that I can share that from Alpha, and I encourage it out there, is we talked about local boards and commissions. And I know many of us have days at the state, but we are using it as a cycle. That's just a culminating activity. But there's work when we leave the state capitol. What are you doing to get that engagement? What are you doing to educate individuals in your community? But most importantly, what are you doing to serve? Everything isn't about being elected, but there are, and I'll just use Norfolk as an example, there are over 500 positions with over 53 different boards and commissions and authorities where decisions are being made about your life. And so I'm a strong, firm believer in not only do I want my fellow brothers and Alpha Men and others, D9 fraternities to sit at the table, but also individuals to be engaged and to have their voice there. So there's opportunities that are there to be a part of the process. And Stephen said, wow, there's a civic duty and there's civil engagement, but here's your opportunity to serve and to make sure that your voice is included in whatever decisions whatever decisions are being made.
Okay, well, we're coming up on the hour. Do we have any other questions that have not already been answered? Because this is pretty thorough this evening.
Yeah, I think we're pretty good on that.
All right. I have a statement to read before we go to Robert Lester, and this is on behalf of the Divine Nine Fraternities. As a nonpartisan organization, we invited Lieutenant Governor and Attorney General candidates to give remarks, and none were confirmed. Back in September, we had a governor candidate forum with Congresswoman Spanberger. Lieutenant Governor Sears declined our invitation, but we went on anyway. So this is the second forum we've had. And before we close, I want to hear again from Robert Lester to tell you about how, if you don't know already, how you can get involved.
Attended this call this evening. I wanted to put in this space tonight that, as I mentioned earlier, casting the vote, turning out this vote by November the 4th is just the first step. But there is the next step is what we call going to the General Assembly and engaging our elected officials. Now we're going to have some new ones in there, some rookie people or neos in the General Assembly. So they're only going to have about 60 days to get brought up to speed on what goes on at that General Assembly. But what we have talked collectively as the D9 fraternities is how can we collectively, when I talk about power, come together and engage our elected officials. For us, on specific policy, right now, the legislation will be advanced in January. A lot of that has already been worked on this year during the summer or even during the springtime of this year. I compare it to when you get to the General Assembly, those elected officials, 140 elected officials, there's so much coming to them. It's almost like if you were drinking water out of a fire hydrant. That's how much information is being fed to them in this 6-week period. So it's important that we engage our elected officials ahead of time. But for this year, because this year is important, we didn't start earlier because we just are coming together as a Divine Nine fraternities. But what I have suggested is that we reach out to our D9 elected officials And if we have one, I know of two in our fraternity, is Delegate Luke Torian and Delegate Cliff Hayes. If we reach out to them and they have legislation that we believe in and support, that we come together as a Divine Nine fraternity, and we welcome our sorors to come in with us because we're all together and support legislation that our Divine Nine legislators are already advancing in this coming session. Later on, maybe next year, we can start the process earlier and work on legislation that we want to see move forward. But we don't want to just vote on by November the 4th and stop there. So my call to action is, if you have an elected official who is part of the D9, reach out to that person. Ask them, do you have legislation? Or they do. What legislation are you working on to advance our people, Black people, who whether it's education, things of that nature, and we ask you to bring it back to us as a committee, and that we can all together go up to the General Assembly and support these bills. I'll close with this. We have so much collective power. If I just talked about Omega Psi Phi, we have 40-something chapters all around the Commonwealth of Virginia. That means we could engage about 50 different legislators ourselves. Then you put in the other 4 fraternities, that we have overlap over this whole Commonwealth. We have, to my knowledge, we have over 10,000 financial members. That is a lot of power. If you engage an elected official in Roanoke on an issue that we believe in, whether it's something with housing or something like that for students, and you're engaging an elected official in Roanoke, you're engaging an elected official in Northern Virginia, out in Hampton Roads and in Richmond, and you're getting to these elected officials all over the Commonwealth, you have so much power. So I will close with that. Please reach out to your D9 elected officials, and let's see if we can support a legislation to move this Commonwealth forward this year in 2026. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Robert. Well said. Cleve Packer. I'm also on the committee with Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Just really quickly, I'm going to go through a couple of slides. My call to action, our call to action, is this toolkit. You heard about some of this a little earlier, but again, registering and making sure that you're active in voting. You can scan that QR code there, finding your polling place and ballot information, scan that QR code there, and it will take you to where you need to be. Absentee and early voting, applying, again, we talked about that earlier. If you want to check on that, you can scan that QR code there. And who is your legislator? Again, you can scan that QR code to find out who that is based on where you live. Next slide. As we know, there is a gubernatorial election. We are nonpartisan, so we want to share information on both candidates. This QR code here will take you to find out more about the candidates and where they stand on certain positions. You can also go to guides.vote to find out the same information on the lieutenant governor and attorney general candidates. Next slide. So again, here are some focuses for the Commonwealth of Virginia. Again, the governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general, all eyes are on the state of Virginia. And as Virginia goes, the United States goes. All 100 House seats in the General Assembly are up for election. So it's not just about the highest elected offices in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It is also about those House seats and how important it is that we're engaged and get out to vote. Again, you can check on your voter registration. Early voting ends November the 1st. Again, souls to the polls. You can read that information there. And again, I strongly advise using social media as an informative tool to reach out to large audiences. And finally, as we go into our Virginia election and on November the 4th, the next call to action, quite frankly, is the midterms in 2026. United States elections, 435 congressional House seats will be up, 33 Senate seats, This will be the most important mentor election in modern history. We will continue, as Stephen Miller Pitt says, our coalitions. Anyone who wants to partner with us, feel free to. Lastly, I just want to take a moment before we close to thank our committee. We are the D9 Fraternity Virginia Political Initiative. Our members are Carlos Clanton, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Robert Fairchild, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Robert Lester, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Stephen Miller Pitts, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity, and Stephen Okoba, Iota Phi Theta. And yours truly, Cleve Packer, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity. I'd like to thank our committee, who's been diligent, meeting weekly since March, to keep us engaged, share information, and to be able to put this information out to not only our brothers, but the general public at large for civic engagement. Thank you to my committee, our committee.
Thank you so much, Cleve Packer. So this was an hour in Power Plus. I hope that you did get to learn something this evening, and I hope it inspired you. If you're not already registered to vote, you can do that tomorrow. But most importantly, share the information that you learned tonight. I hope it inspired you not to sit on the couch. As you know, many people are registered to vote and they do not vote. This is not the time to sit on the sidelines. So on behalf of the Virginia Divine Nine Fraternities Voter Education Virtual Town Hall, we are signing off. And thank you very much for the invitation, and good night.